Right, ladies and gentlemen, so we have this session. The theme of this evening is Sir Syed's movement and its role in the emancipation of women. So what can be better than getting women who have in their background Sir Syed Ahmad Khan to sit here and talk? And that's what we're going to do. Can I call our panel here, please? Okay, so I'll just introduce these ladies to the audience. Dr. Nosheen Wasim, she is an old student of Aligarh and is daughter of parents who studied and worked at Aligarh. She now is a senior research fellow in London and is based in the Department of Genetics at the Institute of Ophthalmology, University College London. Next to her is Professor Simi Ali, another alumna of Aligarh, whose father was also educated at Aligarh. After her graduate and postgraduate degrees, she obtained a PhD in biochemistry from AMU and now is a professor of immunology, Institute of Cellular Medicine at the Medical School of the University of Newcastle. Next to her is Mrs. Subuhi Ansari Habibullah. Yeah, another former Aligarhian who used to be very active politically on the campus. She was a cabinet member of Abdullah Girls College Union, then was secretary of Abdullah Girls College Union, and then was president of Abdullah Girls College Union, and then she became the second woman cabinet member of Aligarh Students Union. So she is the second lady cabinet member of Aligarh Muslim University Student Union, and she was also very active in the drama club, in the literary club, and in the music club in her time. Next we have, so these three are alumni of Aligarh Muslim University, but we have got two very special people over here. We have Nazish Zaidi, who was, you were born in India, isn't it? You were born in UK. Yeah, she was born in UK, but her parents again are from Aligarh. Her father, Dr. Ehsan Zafar Zaidi, is a consultant surgeon. He has been a past president of this association. But talking of women, her mother, look what her mother did in her time. Her mother, Narjis Zaidi, was 3 times women's badminton champion, participated in athletics at state level, and represented AMU's women's badminton team in various intervarsity tournaments. Nazish, of course, got her degree from University of London and then from University of Cambridge, and now works as a banker. She does a lot of charity work and is associated with a number of social and cultural organizations in London. She enjoys Indian classical music and has a deep interest in Sufism. Clap. Then we have Nida Suri, daughter of our present president, Dr. Shahnaz Mustasuri, and a very gentleman and a very interesting person. Her father was barrister Betab Suri, who was, of course, a lawyer, a barrister, and he was also a wonderful satirical Urdu poet. Nida, of course, was born here. Is that right? Yes, you were born here. And she was, of course, brought up here only in UK. She studied at the Imperial College London and now works as an accident and emergency consultant and leads the major trauma team at the Watford General Hospital. Right, so what we want to know, we'll start from Dr. Nausheen, and we'll just move on. I think very basic thing. Tell us a little bit, and we have to be very brief. Tell us a little bit about your life at Aligarh and what you gained from there, and how did your experiences or whatever you learned at Aligarh helped you in your life and in your career. You have your mics. Yeah, you can take the mic out if you want and talk. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yes. I can hear myself. Right. So I did my schooling from Lady Fatma, and then when I was in standard 8, my dad got a job abroad. So we all moved abroad, and there my dad find out that there was no good schools. So within 1 year he decides to come back. And then we were told that it was his decision that we go private and do a private high school in Abdullah College. So from standard 8 to standard 9, we sat into the private courses that Abdullah Girls College did. And we saved 1 year of my life with not so good consequences. But that's one thing that was available for girls only. It wasn't available for gentlemen. So somebody like me had this advantage. So that's how I got into Aligarh Muslim University. I did my BSc, I did my MSc there. The thing that was hammered in during that time was the concept of tehzeeb and the core syllabus. It was kind of every time it was that. The concept of tehzeeb didn't change at all. You go to only girls' school, you go to mixed school. The concept of tehzeeb was there. So that's the thing that was taught during MSc. When I came to do PhD, I had all this freedom, and I had this knowledge, a core knowledge, and I thought, okay, so I had so many questions, but there were no resources. But being an Aligarhian, or probably being an Indian, teaches you to be resourceful. So you find people who will do or who will help you do things. So that's what I found, a person called Wasim Bhai, and I got in touch with him and got things done. And we ultimately married, and I moved here. You make use of resources. So I got my PhD here.
That is a very good use of resources.
That's what happens when you are a Ligurian. You grab all the resources. So I came here, and suddenly for 6 months, my favorite word was ho. So everything was ho because there was no tehzeeb. The concept of tehzeeb was all out of the window. So once after 6 months, when my ho subsided, I realized this is a beautiful place because I've got the knowledge, I've got the resources. So I went and did some wonderful things. I did my PhD from UCL, where I raised antibodies which are commercially available. I made a database of hemophilia B for 2/3 population of UK. And now I'm studying genetics of glaucoma, and hopefully, inshallah, there'll be something good coming out there as well.
Thank you very much. Nausheen Wasim. Thank you. Now the mic moves to Professor Simi Ali. Same question. What did you do at Aligarh? What do you remember of it? And how did it help you in your career and in your life?
Well, Assalamu alaikum everyone, and it's indeed a privilege and an honor to be here. And thank you, Khurshid Bhai, for the invitation, both of you. I was just speaking to my niece who's with me here that I feel embarrassed that I've been in this country for the last 26 years, and it's the first time I've turned up to support the Aligarhian Sir Syed Day. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I really enjoyed the talk you just gave. So my association with Aligarh is quite a long one. My father was in a transferable job, so I did all my schooling in Gujarat, in Ahmedabad. So there, compared to North India, it's more liberal. And my father was also educated in Aligarh, so he had always, my future was charted out that I would be going to Aligarh. I went to Aligarh as a 15-year-old in early 80s, and I stayed there all the way through my MSc. And later on, I did my PhD in Lucknow, but the institute I did didn't award the degree, so the degree was awarded from Aligarh. I have very fond memories of Aligarh. Initially when I went, I thought it was a bit of a culture shock because I didn't have this concept of single-sex education, of curfews, of being only allowed to go out on a Sunday. But then, recently I've become very involved in the parity of women in science and trying to retain women in STEM subjects and facilitating their career. And that made me think, somebody asked me that what are the key things you would think are required to encourage women in science. And I was thinking about it, and I thought that perhaps my experience in Aligarh, being in a single-sex institution, did not do me a disservice. And the reason is because I was in an environment where the role models were women. We had, the seniors were doing excellent. They were going on to brilliant careers. And also sometimes, it's something that has been researched, and I think it's very clear that the confidence level of girls versus boys at that age is a thing. So perhaps being in a single-sex environment, I did probably do much better than maybe I would have done if I was in a mixed environment. I did enjoy Aligarh very much. Initially, I did think it was very conservative, but then I think later on I revised my thought as maybe modern or slightly warm conservatism, because it celebrated all the festivities there. There were things like Basant and all, which I wasn't used to celebrating before, and they were celebrated in Abdullah Hall with a lot of gusto. Our chefs used to make everything yellow. So it was a very happy time of my life, and probably most importantly, I have made very good connections, and like you say, people are resourceful. I've got very good network of friends who are Aligarhians, not limited to UK or India, almost everywhere else in the world. I do maintain my connections, and I think invariably we have all been helpful to each other. And I do feel, on reflection, I feel it provided an excellent environment for probably both men and women, young men and women, and I have benefited enormously from that. It placed me in a very good position that I was awarded a Commonwealth Fellowship, which I took up in Manchester, and subsequently I took up my postdoctoral position. I got a fellowship in Newcastle, and at that time we were thinking of immigrating to Canada, but I was retained by the university. I really enjoy my job, what I do, but I owe a big gratitude to Aligarh, and I hope women there will continue to be inspired and fulfill the vision of Sir Syed Ahmed, not only educated, but educated in subjects which are important for the progress of the community.
Well done, thank you, excellent. That's an example how innovative you are, and how you have used, one can say, your hurdles as your stepping stones. You used something that you thought at that time was not useful for you, but later on you turned it around, and you're now using that experience to do something new. Thank you very much. And now we want to hear something entirely different, and that is from Suvi Ansari Sahaba. आप अंग्रेज़ी में बोलिए, उर्दू में बोलिए, जिसमें हिंदी में बोलिए, जितनी ज़बानें हम समझ सकते हैं उनमें से किसी में बोल दीजिए।
हेलो। मेरा जो अच्छी एकेडमिक रिकॉर्ड है वो तो इतना ब्रिलियंट नहीं है जो हमारे पैनलिस्ट का है, बाकी हम तो दूसरे कामों में लगे हुए थे, एनीवे मैं एक शेर के साथ सर सैयद को ये डेडिकेट करते हुए शुरू करूँगी।
करीब रख लें माइक अपने।
हेलो। हज़ारों साल नरगिस अपनी बेनूरी पे रोती है, बड़ी मुश्किल से होता है जवन में दीदवर पैदा। I feel very privileged and humbled to be a part of the Sir Syed Bicentenary celebrations in London. Dr. Fareed asked me to speak about my time in Aligarh, so though it's a full dastan, I would like to say a couple of things. It has been nearly 37 years since I left the university, but it is very fresh in my mind, and I feel no age gap between me and the younger generation when I visit Aligarh every year. I spend the best of my prime years in AMU and still feel the gehma-gehmi buzz of the law faculty. Just opposite my faculty was the Union building, where I would go and meet other students after my classes. While returning from the Union, the tire of my cycle was always flat, and I always looked for Akhtar Bhai, the Students' Union peon, to help me. Yeah. As I belonged to a diverse family and was exploring my potential in a traditional and conventional environment, it was the most interesting and thought-provoking time for me. I remember I was considered to be a trendy girl. No one told me at that time, cycling on a red cycle, my trademark, wearing clogs, loose trousers and shirt and no dupatta. On top of that, I had no fear of boys. If any boy made any comments, I just stopped my cycle and asked his hal-chal. And boys never expected that kind of reaction from girls. और पतली गली से निकल जाते थे. I had studied in the girls' college, but I went to the law faculty. I contested the Students' Union election, and this was the most interesting time for me. I always got support from the majority. There were a few incidents when students from the extreme right wing direct confronted me and advised me to maintain the Islamic values and uphold the Aligarh ki riwayat. But I always challenged them and pursued my goals. As they say, log saath aate gaye aur karwan banta gaya. I had participated in stage plays with boys even though they challenged me that I can't act, but I never got intimidated by such groups and carried on with what I thought best at that time. There was an element that had an oppressive agenda, but I fought for my freedom of expression. I learned a lot. There were different platforms and opportunities to explore my horizon and my maximum potential in my college and university life. I was naive and unfamiliar with the terminologies such as oppression, sex discrimination, etc. Unknowingly, I fought against these terms at my personal level and always provided opportunities for my fellow students. I maintained my dignity, made no compromise with right-wing thinking, and always upheld the rights of a student. I came to this country in 1980, just मुंह उठा के चले आए, ना घर, ना नौकरी, ना ज़बान, but the values and skills that I learned from, but the values and skills that I learned in the AMU, I implemented literally everywhere to fight, to make a position in adverse condition, to have confidence and take no shortcuts. I came here, worked in a bank, brought up 3 children, studied and obtained a social worker degree while I was working and looking after my family. Yes, I must admit that I was not an active alumni, but inshallah, now I have time and I will contribute.
Inshallah, well done. Thank you very much. See, what a wonderful talk. You've told us so many things, and what a varied experience of things. Thank you very much for coming here.
Can I just say?
Yes, yeah. I will say one thing. I mean, this was a very active family in Aligarh in our time. I mean, I followed her few years later. And one of my juniors, a girl, my junior, 1 year, somebody 1 year junior to me, and her cousin, Zoya Ansari. Zoya Ansari was the captain of what? Guess?
Writing club?
Writing club. She was the captain of university writing club. So, so you have this, yes, Professor Simiali said, and that is true. I mean, there is that environment, there's that environment. So, Aligarh, somebody said about India, sorry, I may be wasting time. Somebody said this about India, that you say anything about India and that will be true. And I think that is, you say this about India, that will be true. You say opposite of it, and that will be true. I think similar thing is about Aligarh. So you have so many things going on at the same time. So you have this thing. So thank you very much. Thank you. And now we come to Nazish. Nazish, you, of course, you didn't study there. But in your home, I think it was all the time Aligarh, and Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, and those traditions, those mushairas, this, that, and your uncle was a very good poet as well, isn't it? And all that culture that you, although were not there, but you were there, isn't it? So tell us something, what you think about how Sir Syed's thinking or Aligarh's culture or whatever came into your family helped you.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to say when I was invited to actually speak here, I first asked, I'm like, why me? Because I obviously have not studied in Aligarh. But then when I was told about if I need to speak about how I have indirectly been affected or my life has been enriched by Aligarh, I thought, okay, that is something I can talk about. But I'm actually going to go a few steps back. And I'd actually say that as an outsider, you see a lot more. So I would say, first of all, the vision of this one man to create a university. And in that university, they had modern education, but at the same time, that university was still entrenched in values which were important to the Muslims of that time in North India. And I think that was very important because it allowed people to send their daughters to university. And I actually think that that has made a big difference to a lot of us who are here today, because we did not have to have those battles of saying, I would like to go to university, I want a modern education, I want to do this, or I want to travel. When I look at my family in particular, on my mother's side, my mom's cousin was the first one to go to university. And when her father had admitted her to university, you had people from the towns nearby come and say, what on earth are you doing? Right? You are sending your women folk to study. And from my mum's household, there are about 8 women that went to study at Aligarh. And once they went there, I think the enrichment that they had in their lives, they kept their cultures, yet they were all educated in modern subjects. You have one that studied law, somebody else became an artist, science, and as we talked about my mum, she was into sports. She didn't like studying, but she could still do something, right? So she had the ability to basically, she was exposed to a place which allowed her to hone in on her talents, and she was able to do things which she probably would not have been able to do if Aligarh was not there. Even if she went to another university, I don't think it had all those facilities. So that is one thing I think I would feel very indebted to my mum, my mum's friends, many of those ladies that are here. When I was growing up, everyone was educated, and educated to a very high level. So for me, when people talk about Muslims not being educated, I used to think that's really weird. Because when we grew up, and I think the same thing is for Nida, we just had educated people around us, men and women. So that is something which is very important. And when we talk about basically the culture of Aligarh and Shairi being in my house, yes. My father and his brothers speak in poetry. My aunts would talk in poetry. When they have their jokes, they're talking about friends that they were matchmaking, who are now married, who didn't know that they were being fooled. So those kind of stories is what we know. But also at the same time, a huge network of influential and interesting people. So no matter where we go, and even today in India, when you look at people that are in influential positions, a lot of them owe something back to this gentleman here, because they got the education, they got the contacts. So for me, I think as a person who is a child of parents that have studied in Aligarh, also my grandfather went to Aligarh as well, I think it's really enriched my journey as an individual.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well done. Thank you. And last but not least, Nida, you, of course, you were here, and your mother was, of course, so very active in all the associations that were established from time and again, related to Aligarh, and of course, Aligarh Muslim History Alumni Association as well. And your father was a poet. So let us hear from you. What does Sir Syed and Aligarh haunt you?
Assalamu alaikum. I have to say, Nazish has taken many of my points. Going last is definitely the hardest position. Aligarh has always had a huge influence on my life. I am from an Aligarh family on both sides. My mother's family, my father's family. Aligarh is a touchstone almost. From the outside, certainly, it sometimes feels like a community that you can never be part of, that you're kind of glancing off the walls of, and looking in and wanting to be part of, but never quite managing it. It's a very inclusive community, the Aligarh community. Everyone knows everyone. My God, everyone knows everyone. There is no escape, and you just have to mention one name, and people will be able to tell you entire generations of history, which. If Aligarh has taught me so much. I mean, through my mother, through my father, who wasn't an Aligarh, but had a love-hate relationship with it. Definitely love because of Ummi. Hate, I think, because of how much time the Alumni Association sometimes took up in our lives, when he could have been doing Shairi instead. But Aligarh is a huge influence on so many Indian Muslims' lives. If anything, the most important thing is that it shows that women can be educated to a high standard, can be allowed to flourish, given freedom, and expected to do well. That's the most important thing. If you are from an Aligarhian family, there is never any possibility that you will just be allowed to kind of do something. You have to do well. You have to succeed. If you don't succeed, there's something wrong with you. I mean, I've become a doctor. My cousin's got a PhD in biochemistry, another, masters, and we've got degrees coming out of every orifice almost. Forgive the medicalness. And that's certainly the thing that Aligarh teaches you, is that it's a community of educated, forward-thinking people who not only propel themselves forward, but bring others forward with them in a way that makes other people want to be part of that community. And it teaches you tehzeeb, it teaches you resourcefulness, it teaches you that you can do just about anything at any point. It teaches you that to have networks of people that you can always draw on. I remember when I was very young, we were at a tube station and a man heard Ammi and I talking Urdu to each other. And he said, "Oh, I hear you're speaking Urdu. Where are you from?" And Ammi started mentioning Aligarh. And this man, who we just met at a tube station, had studied at Aligarh 20 years before that. And I still remember how happy he was to have met an Aligarh just there. And that's the other thing about Aligarh, is that it's something that's so deeply embedded in you guys who are Alighs. I think if we cut you down to the bone, you'd find Aligarh inscribed on the bones inside you. And I don't think you realise how deeply it affects you and how deeply it's influenced you and formed you until you're looking from where Nazish and I look, and you see that we will never have that. And it's sad in some ways that we will never have that, but you guys are so lucky to have that. And the kids who are coming through now, I think, perhaps don't have it quite as strongly, but it's still there. And that's what Aligarh is. It's community and family and networking and a drive to always succeed for me.
Thank you so much for that. And also thank you for using some orthopedic metaphors, written down on the bone and things like that.
Can I finish with one share?
Of course, and I was going to come to that. Do you remember any share from your father?
So my Abu was a shair, as I said. He wasn't an Aligh, but he was pretty much an honorary Aligh because of me and all of the time that he spent supporting the Alumni Association. He spent a lot of time supporting it. Just one of his share. हम खिज़ा की पत्तियों से कुछ ज़्यादा तो नहीं, फैल जाएंगे ज़मीन पर वक्त जब आ जाएगा, है मगर बेताब वक्त आने की बात, आज मेरा कल तुम्हारा वक्त सबका आएगा.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, the university has been a source of many social changes. And in free India, it continues to be the biggest think tank for modernist Muslims. Although Sir Syed's interest, or maybe lack of it, in the education of women is often debated. But as you can see, perhaps the biggest social change that the AMU as an institution has successfully brought about is in the area of education and emancipation of women. A number of Muslim women who are academics, civil servants, doctors, engineers, scientists, writers, journalists, bankers, film personalities, artists, and politicians, etc., will trace their roots to Aligarh. In that, either they themselves were educated at Aligarh, or their parents were inspired or influenced by Sir Syed's reformist movement. And the dominant thinking in Aligarh has been that for a long time. It was in early 1930s that this share was written for women. तेरे माथे पे ये आंचल बहुत ही खूब है, लेकिन तू इस आंचल से एक परचम बना लेती तो अच्छा था. Thank you, the family. Thank you.